Greetings, my name is Jason, and I am 40 years old. Davenport, Iowa, the town where my narrative begins, was a place where life had, up until very recently, seemed to be comfortable and predictable. Over the course of 15 years, I had been working hard in the maintenance department of a frozen food facility. The job was not particularly exciting, but it was secure, it offered a consistent income, and it made it possible to live a life that was peaceful and pleasant. Marcy, on the other hand, worked in the pharmaceutical industry as a sales representative. One thing that had never really concerned me was the fact that she had always earned more than I did. I was of the opinion that our duties were complementary to one another. I was responsible for taking care of things at home, preparing meals, repairing items, and making sure that our expenses were paid on time. Even though we had made a lot of efforts, we had not been successful in having children. The medical professionals were unable to provide a conclusive explanation, and they just referred to it as one of those things. Both of us, and especially Marcy, had a great deal of discomfort as a result of it. This shared sorrow, this unsatisfied yearning, I sincerely believed, had brought us closer together, so establishing our connection in a manner that was one of a kind. That, I now understand, was a basic error in judgment on my part. After I was terminated from my position, everything in our environment, which appeared to be peaceful, started to fall apart. Our whole maintenance crew was unceremoniously terminated as a result of the major reduction that the company went through. The news came as a total surprise. I was sitting outside the Human Resources office, holding a severance packet, and staring blankly at an unknown future. One moment, I was methodically mending a coolant line, engaged in the boring rhythm of my work. The next second, I was sitting outside of the office, staring blankly at an uncertain future. The truth of my unemployment was a chilly, unyielding weight that was weighing down on me when I returned home that afternoon. I was shaking so badly that I could barely stand. My instant response was to inform Marcy. She encircled me closely and spoke to me in a soothing and encouraging tone. As she hushed, "It's okay," she said. "We'll get through this together." Unquestionably, I had faith in her. Over the course of the first couple of weeks, Marcy kept up an appearance that was supportive to the outside world. She brought home takeout meals so that I wouldn't have to cook, and she gave words of comfort such as, "Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise. You can finally pursue that passion project you've always talked about." As a further demonstration of her determination that we would not let this setback to define us, she even took me out to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. I was sincerely thankful for her unwavering support at what was obviously a difficult time period. Her actions were thoughtful and nearly persuasive, and I was grateful for her assistance from the beginning. In addition to attending a large number of interviews, I diligently updated my resume, searched for new job postings with great care, and so on. My confidence, which was already quite frail, was further undermined by each unsuccessful attempt. I was surprised to find that the job market was more competitive than I had imagined, and the never-ending stream of emails that were courteous but firm and stated, "We've decided to pursue other candidates," started to have their influence. Marcy's initial veneer of support began to crumble as the weeks turned into months, showing an underlying depth of dissatisfaction and impatience for the situation. At first, the minor changes in her behavior were so modest that they were almost immaterial. After some time had passed, she began going back home, her explanations being hazy and even inconsistent. The talk she was having on the phone became more subdued, her voice went lower, and she rapidly terminated calls whenever I entered the room. The gentle hugs and words of reassurance became increasingly sparse, and they were replaced by a subtle coldness, a palpable distance that penetrated our shared space. A chilly silence that accentuated my mounting fears appeared in the air in our home, which had before been filled with a comfortable companionship. The air became dense with tension that was not uttered. On a particularly trying Monday, following yet another depressing job interview that felt like a pointless exercise, I arrived home sooner than I normally would have. Due to the fact that Marcy frequently worked late on Mondays, I made the decision to amuse her. In the hopes of rekindling some of the warmth and connection that had progressively evaporated between us, I intended to create her favorite handmade dinner, which was herbed salmon with roasted asparagus. This was a recipe that she often raved about, and I planned to prepare it together. The front door was unlocked in a stealthy manner, and I was ready to start cooking. There was an abnormally low level of noise throughout the house, but then I became aware of a faint murmur of voices coming from our bedroom. I took a momentary pause, a peculiar and disturbing sensation working its way into my stomach. Marcy's voice was soft and intimate, yet it was not directed at me. It seemed like she was speaking to me. With a painful thump, my heart started to beat faster and faster. When I approached the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, I did it slowly and carefully. What I witnessed shattered my universe into a million pieces that could never be repaired. Marcy was clad in nothing but a flimsy lace chemise as she sat in front of her laptop, which was illuminated by the glow of the screen. Her face was active, and her laughing was warm and seductive. It was undeniable that she was participating in a video conversation. Then, I heard her comments, which were firm and unmistakable, directed toward a person whom I was unable to see but who I immediately recognized as a male. "Oh, Brent," she mumbled quietly, "my pathetic husband just doesn't get it. Due to his lack of employment, he has been lazing around the house for several months. At this point, he is completely pointless." Even though it was barely audible, my throat let out a stifled gasp, which was sufficient to cause her to look up. My eyes met hers, and her eyes were wide with disbelief. Suddenly, the sneer that had been on her face faded, and it was replaced by a short expression of dread, followed by a glare that was cold and defiant. I was the target of the man on the television, who appeared to be a smug figure with black hair and a watch that was excessively costly. He stared past Marcy and directly at me. He appeared to be in a state of contented triumph, as if he had just been awarded a prize. The center of my world began to tilt. It became difficult to breathe as the air became thinner. When I heard her words, they reverberated in my ears, rebounding off the walls and crushing me under the weight of their harshness. "You're a loser now," she said. Due to the fact that she was confident in the fact that I was meant to be miles away, pounding the pavement in search of a job, she had not bothered to drop her voice while she was speaking. The betrayal was a blow to my body, an anguish that was so intense and piercing that it surpassed any other physical pain I had ever experienced. Neither did I yell. My voice was not heard. She was frantically trying to shut off her laptop, and her face was now a mask of frenzied terror. I simply stood there, completely motionless, and watched her. That evening, I began packing. We did not exchange a single word with one another. Nothing else could be said at that point. The utter lack of sound was stifling and deafening. The fragments of my shattered dignity, together with my clothes and a handful of my most treasured items, were painstakingly gathered back together. In the doorway, Marcy observed me, and her eyes were devoid of any regret. All that was visible was a smoldering rage at the fact that she had been discovered. I walked out of that house, leaving behind 15 years of a life that I believed to be true, leaving behind a lady who I no longer recognized, and stepping into a void of uncertainty with my heart a raw gash that was bleeding. It was 3 months later when I was informed of a shocking piece of information that had been passed on to me by a person we both knew. Marcy had been sacked from her job unexpectedly. An anonymous report was apparently provided to her company, which detailed her unethical behavior with clients and revealed her extramarital affair with Brent, a high-ranking executive from a competing pharmaceutical company. The tip also revealed that she had been having an affair with Brent. Due to the company's high regard for its reputation, her job was terminated without delay. I was aware of the existence of the irony. In spite of the fact that she had so brutally referred to me as a loser, Marcy was now facing the hard and uncomfortable reality of being unemployed herself. I would soon learn that this was just the beginning of her dramatic fall from grace, but that was just the beginning. In the beginning, I experienced a paradoxical feeling of vindication. The fulfillment was icy and far off, and it was devoid of genuine happiness. I was in a great deal of pain because of her actions, and now it appeared like karma was delivering its own terrible punishment. Nevertheless, as the weeks went by, additional information about her life that was falling apart began to come back to me. When Marcy was once so accustomed to luxury and grandeur, she suddenly found herself without a source of income, her costly automobile was repossessed, and her credit cards were at their maximum limit. Due to circumstances beyond her control, she was compelled to give up her affluent life in Davenport and relocate back to her parents' home. This was a humiliating retreat for someone who had always taken pride in her independence and her ability to provide for herself financially. However, the most stunning discovery came from a friend who had saw her working as a waitress at a dive bar in a little town called Moline, which was located a significant distance away from her previous existence. When compared to the Marcy I had known, the image that was portrayed was a striking contrast. The sophisticated business clothes, high heels, and costly perfume that she had been wearing were no longer evident on her person. She was wearing a plain tank top instead, and her eyes were tired and gloomy. Additionally, she was wearing an apron that concealed a growing baby bump, which was indisputably obvious. It would appear that Brent, the one whom she had referred to as her sugar daddy during that fateful video conversation, had vanished into thin air, leaving her to deal with the consequences on her own. The more I learned about him, the more I realized that he was a coward who ran away at the first hint of danger, constantly pursuing the next dazzling distraction and never taking responsibility for his actions. To the best of my knowledge, Marcy gave birth to a baby girl in February, and she called her Hope. Taking into consideration the circumstances, the name struck me as a bitter irony. It is completely unknown to me whether Brent ever acknowledged the child. I seriously doubt it. When life becomes more complicated, men like him do not remain in the same place. Rather, they just disappear in search of the next ephemeral pleasure. Regarding me, a fresh opportunity had presented itself in the midst of the turbulence that was occurring in my personal life. A job offer was extended to me by a logistics company in Cedar Rapids, and I accepted it. In spite of the fact that it was not glamorous, it was secure, it provided a respectable salary, and it promised a new beginning. Following my acceptance of the offer, I packed up my minimal possessions and moved into a modest apartment that was unobtrusive. I started the process of rebuilding my life piece by laborious piece when I purchased a dependable second-hand truck and began the process slowly and painstakingly. On occasion, I continued to communicate with Carrie. During the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, she was a colleague of Marcy's and someone who had offered me a shoulder to weep on in a way that was both discreet and comforting. Neither of us is romantically involved with one another or anything similar. As two individuals, we have successfully made our way through a raging fire that was caused by the same devastating kind of fire. We provide each other with a calming presence and a perspective that is rooted in reality. The process of healing, the painful necessity of establishing emotional walls to protect ourselves, and the terrible yet essential road of learning to trust again are topics that we frequently discuss in our conversations. On some evenings, our conversations go on for hours, during which we meticulously dissect all of the glaring red flags that we so conveniently ignored, the persistent gut feelings that we callously buried, and the insidious lies that we allowed to fester because we were too profoundly afraid of embarking on a terrifying new beginning. By the time Marcy's treachery became public knowledge, I had lost almost everything. Nevertheless, in the midst of that agonizing loss, I also discovered something that is of great value. My own unyielding boundaries, the exact limits of what I would and would not endure, were brought to my attention to be explored. I came to see that genuine love does not, under any circumstances, need the acceptance of treachery, and that being a genuinely nice man does not equate to being a doormat who is subservient to others. A wonderful and unanticipated sense of serenity was revealed to me while I was enveloped in stillness. The freeing power of distance served as a source of clarity for me that cannot be denied. And perhaps most crucially, I came to the realization that true survival is not about who emerges from the experience with the fewest amounts of wounds. Whoever, against all obstacles, is ultimately able to stop bleeding and who finally learns to heal is the subject of this story. To put it simply, it is the story I tell. It is a path that I would not want onto my most formidable foe, but it is one that has helped me become the man I am today in a way that cannot be reversed.